What up? What's going on? Welcome back to another episode. This is my series on authenticity, on knowing yourself, on loving yourself, on being yourself. I think we are now 6 or 7 episodes in. These have all been great. And as you know, the goal is to be under 15 minutes. Typically, I get to around 20, but we'll see what we do here today. All right, let me make sure the volume's up. There we go. Okay. We've been talking about knowing yourself and loving yourself. And we've been talking about paradoxes. We got to paradoxes yesterday. And the question might arise, why are we talking about this? What are we talking about? And I think powerfully we are talking about what is. We're talking about what is. We're talking about something that is true. We're talking about truth. We're talking about paradox, the paradox that everything is all one thing and that we are powerfully a part of that one thing. We are that one thing. We are connected with that one thing, all of us. And that you are all things. And that the identities that we hold have been often given to us. And even though we hold them very tightly, we believe in a very rigid series of things that formulates our sense of the world, that the reality is even greater and bigger and wider. And all kinds of potentials are there once we accept that truth. Like, well, who cares? Why are you talking about this? What is this? What does this mean practically? It means practically that everything is different in a different set of practical beliefs, in a different arrangement, a different web of individual beliefs, which produces individual choices, how we see each other. We could have been born in a condition where there is a strong and meaningful divide between people who have different skin color, right? That shows up in the legal system, that shows up in the judicial system. Oh shit. That could be a condition. It could be as aggressive as the Jim Crow South once had it. So aggressive and open. That's possible, that everyone in that society could consider themselves decent and normal and continue about their work and very quietly normalize that that's possible. Well, what else is possible? All things are possible. All things are possible. And what we're talking about is truth. We're looking at truth. We're looking at truth. And if we're in the spiritual realm, we'd say we're looking at God. When we talk about this paradox and we talk about identity, we're talking about, especially where we've taken it so far, we're talking about philosophy. We're talking about notions of our biology, how we perceive. We're talking about physics. We're talking about quantum physics on some level. But beyond that, we're talking about the forces that are at play in our world. Physics, to me, is another attempt. It's an attempt at knowledge. It's an attempt at what is. It is science's attempt at understanding, giving language to, and creating a narrative about the relationships between what is. Forces that otherwise most of us, you know, you just live and you try to figure shit out, blah blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, someone has to consider, like, why do we stick together? Like gravity. Oh, come up with the language and the framing for that, and understand, give language to how it is that like our muscles work and shit. That's biology. We're looking at truth. So, but you know, sometimes we talk about the nature of what is, and we have these very simple stories. I keep telling you about this guy I had a long argument about with on the question of what's natural, and he keeps pointing to natural selection. So he points to natural selection. He read that in a book somewhere. Somebody told him that. It's a story that's prevalent to him on the question of what is natural. Natural selection, which to him implies a constant struggle for survival where the best equipped, smartest, most powerful, most intelligent win. And he makes an argument for that. Society should look like that. Something like the animal kingdom. It's absurd. It's absurd, right? But what happens is, as I'm saying, this is a story that he's attached to, and he will continue to look out at the world with a pitying sense of himself and his weaknesses that he's aware of, and also projecting weakness, concepts of weakness onto other people, and trying to make himself strong and all this shit in accordance with this story that is not entirely true. The truth of nature also includes cohabitation and cooperation. It includes slow moving plants and animals, you know what I'm saying? It includes bees and pollen, beavers and octopuses, I don't fucking know. Grass. This he has a story that's so meaningful to him. And he misses out on the broader truth about what is, and a fuller story would give him something that he could probably calm the fuck down. He can actually experience life an entirely different way if he could. So why is this important? Because I'm telling you that that's everywhere. I'm telling you that the MAGA people, the people who voted excitedly for Trump twice and wore the hats and are excited, that they are going through an evolution of thought and having to access a wider consciousness about it, when before it was just a big cultural phenomenon. Hey, they turned the electoral system and voting into a circus and a cultural thing, and Americans, all this very nativist stuff. And as they congealed a story about what's going on in the world, what the problems are. The problems are the immigrants, the problems are the queers, the problems are this and that. Let's come. And now it's more and more evident how stupid and manufactured that was. You can see Fox News. You look at it, you can't. Anybody who still watches Fox News for information is just completely adult, right? There's a MAGA construction. There's also, I talked to the Zionist construction. We're going through a world shifting, paradigm shifting experience where we have to ask people in these groups, in these identity groups, to examine what it means to not be so easily, so facile and sort of childlike in their approach, where words, symbols, MAGA means something. I am Israel child, whatever. Like, what is going on? What is reality? What is our shared reality? What is our responsibility to each other? Who am I? Do I have to think about myself as MAGA? Do I have to assume the same value systems of the leadership in my little peer group, in my identity group? If Ben-Gvir says that international law doesn't apply to Jewish people, do I have to agree with that? Do I have to take that on like a 4-year-old? Or can I be an adult person and recognize that, no, that can't work, actually. We don't live in a world like that, actually. And in fact, that might be an indication of a problem. And so what does that mean about me and my culture? And what does that mean about all the assumptions I made and the people that I used to revere and I used to sort of look for leadership? How do I reassess that? It's going to be an interesting thing to unpack and to shed the prior assumptions about the world and about the self, and to come to the understanding, the truth that many of us have been saying for a long time. In fact, people, they call it the left, but it's an awareness that it's all one thing. And the left isn't perfect all the time, but it kind of starts from there. It starts with the effort to understand that the marginalized person is also one thing. That's why slavery doesn't, like, the idea of human enslavement doesn't come from the left. It's a right wing. It's a carving out. It's a separation. It's an acceptance of a separation. There was always a John Brown. There was always other people way back then making the case. They lost the argument many times in the 1850s for why there's something wrong in our society, but they existed. The paradox existed. They didn't ignore it. They dealt in truth. And we are all sort of trained in this consciousness of separation. Why does it matter? Just like the MAGAs and the Zionists, we just have we just breaking news about this rape academy. I'm not a fan of bringing attention to CNN, but CNN seems to have done some investigative work and found this international academy and a website, an online website that specializes in and normalizes and elevates the whole concept of rape, and had an economy on drugs and how to get away with it, and porn that glamorized this kind of thing. Well, what's happening there? It's the same thing. It's the same. Like, I really think there's like a couple of people that lead this. There's like a website called motherless.com. There's a guy who runs this website who profits from a thing. There are people who are disconnected, and they create, and then you form these. How many of us how many of us know how to actually intentionally challenge the groups that we're in? Because what I want to point to there is, I don't think I know anybody who would go on one of these websites or be involved in that. I don't think I know anyone like that. But I do know that I've been in chat rooms with men where there is a normalized separation, where the women are this other thing. And we meet, and we have met. This is years back. I don't frequent these things, but I can speak to this. I can attest to this. Like, we meet on the concept of, we agree on the vernacular and the assumptions of, oh, the girlfriends and the women and these hoes and these bitches that you can't get, and this, and how to, you know, date them, and what's the best, and who's the sexiest, and all kinds of stuff. It's a combination of benign masculine stuff and then some really toxic stuff, and very stuff that passes subtly. And we laugh, we hit the laugh emoji on things that should otherwise not be humorous. And again, like I was trying to point to, like, a couple of people probably lead the energy, and then other people just follow. So what a paradox there. How many people, men, consider themselves men and like to think of themselves, create an identity around their own independence, their independence of thought, their own, masculinity as their own, creative structures, but they follow. They just repeat stuff. They just do what everybody else is doing. They don't have the capacity to ground themselves and then be in a room and actually set the flagpole, like set what it is, and say, no, we're gonna do something different here. So this is how you get a website that does this kind of shit, that has 62 million followers or 62 million visits in a month. Because deeper than like intelligence, like, we could just call people stupid, we could call people indoctrinated, or we can look deeper than intelligence, is like this kind of like identity phenomena. And as I said in a previous episode, it's not just an identity phenomena of affiliation, about like a definition of manhood, but also of your own smallness. I'm just a guy. I don't, you frame yourself as less than. But I want to say that everything matters. Everything matters. Your presence in a room is powerful as soon as you decide that. As soon as you understand that that's true, and you decide that, and you step in with that consciousness. And it's not just in these things too. It shows up in other things. It shows up in life. It shows up in your ability to stand up and like demand the higher salary, for instance. It shows up in your ability to set the tone of any room and in any circumstance. These like subtle ways of trying to be accepted. And sometimes I like to come back to something kind of personal. Dag, I already hit 15 minutes. My goodness. Let me try to keep going for this because I want to hit this. Sometimes I do something personal because it just pulls it in for me, like the feeling of what it might be. My wife invited me to a drag brunch a couple of years ago. My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, his wife, a small group. We all went to a drag brunch, breakfast thing at a restaurant, drag performers. They had like 3 performers, singing, dancing, doing comedy. And like, I'm a grown man, like, and I don't suffer from, I think, the kind of like the separations on sexual orientation. I don't suffer from the sort of the ways that homophobia shows up for a lot of people, but it was still there for me, and this kind of, it showed that for me, because I go to the drag brunch and we're having a good time. laughing and stuff. The comedian was actually funny, and I was aware, I was self-aware. I was aware I wasn't able to just relax because, there's pictures out, everyone's filming and stuff, and I was aware of myself as a masculine guy in this room and the implications of what it could seem like. It took me a while. It actually took me like a half hour of like being in the environment and noticing myself, and then I was able to notice what was happening. I had an image of like one of these pictures or myself or the drag queen coming over and hugging me or something, and um, so this awareness of the presentation of people looking, and then I was like, who am I nervous about? It drew me to ask that question. Who would I be explaining that picture to? In my imaginal thing, my mind created this. Who would I be explaining that picture to? And it was like, oh, I realized I'd be explaining it to the dudes I knew. I'd be explaining it to the men I knew, the guys I played football with, and the guys I knew in my professional life who, like, this kind of straight, heterosexual performance is a thing. And it was like, oh no, and, so in my mind, I'd be making these, I would have to explain myself to these people. And that's when it hit me that like, fuck that. That's something in my mind and it's something to overcome. I'm a grown man and I'm here and this is a cool event and the food is good and everybody's having a good time, and the awareness that even then I had things in my mind that were setting the boundaries of my ability to appreciate the moment. So it made me think, what else is there in my head like that? Who else? What other voices? And even those men, what other things have they said that I've agreed to subtly that I feel like if I would have to explain. And so then I was able to like push even further. So let's say I had to explain, what would I say? I'd say, oh, it was a drag show. It was a good time. Fuck out of here. That's what I would say. And so once I did that, I was able to like dispel it. I was able to like dissolve it actually. And then I was able to relax and actually be in the moment, right? But so like that process had to happen though, because I had these unconscious stories that if I can go my whole life never telling that story, I can go and after that never really processing those feelings and noticing what I was doing and why I wasn't present, what kinds of agreements and attachments are playing in the story that I hold in my mind, and then asking deep. And so from that, I've been able to ask even more questions and like be a full person. It's just one example. And I think it's pertinent in this case of this, like this world that we're in, where men, grown adult men, turn a blind eye to rape, laugh it down, try to defend it, they're more interested in protecting their own selves. I'm one of the good ones, or I don't have a responsibility to do anything more than what I do, or to not chastise their friend who, even if they're one of the good ones, their friend is adjacent, and to notice that and to tell the friend or to do something to demonstrate what it means to be one of the good ones, to set a boundary so that that friend knows that that friend doesn't have a friend in you. Actually, on this measure, I've said this before, like like a lot of dudes I know, even in our 40s, cats will say no homo for stuff. No homo. This is no homo. It's no homo. Everything is a no homo. Somebody is eating a banana, and it motherfucker sees a dick instead of like, I see a banana. This is your focus on this. Everything's no homo. But what's bothering me with that, is that we are building. When you do that, powerfully, energetically, you are co-creating. You are co-creating a vernacular, a story about who we are. We are against something that's invented, and it's so much attention and energy have been put to that separation that this is very easy for us. We easily develop a vernacular, we easily reinforce the boundary, and we easily perform this thing, consciousness against. We are straight versus the gay person. You know what we need? We need that boundary, that kind of, no predator, no violence. If we took that same energy and transferred it to that and said that we in this group every day several times a day, we enforce that separation instead of the silly no homo thing, we'd have an entirely different arrangement. It would be unacceptable. Things would happen. People would, there would be little pockets of whatever, but I think there's a failing when people want to talk about what's the problem with men. There's a failing in that definition, that effort to actually define it needs to be very clear. But everything's fucked, right? The president is a fucking pedo. The whole thing's fucked. So like in terms of who can lead that, who can lead the thing, everyone's still, they're trying to ignore that stuff in order to keep the whole mythology going and to keep being MAGA or to keep being whatever they are. No one wants to call things exactly what they are. It's too much. It's too much. It's too much. Well, your little step every day is actually all you need. You don't need to do too much. You simply need to assert what is. You need to assert the truth every day. You need to be the truth. You need to love yourself. You need to know that you are powerful enough that you can assert it, that you don't have to shy from it. And then you give everybody else, even other people who are also uncertain about their power, they have the permission as well. Once you notice that these stories are in hell and they're constraining you, you can discard it. You can discard the story, actually. You have the power. You are the authority, actually. You don't have to look for a leader. How Billy sees it. Love yourself. Know yourself. I'll see you tomorrow.